welcome and thank you all for being here today. However many, let's see, my participant, well, I can't see it right now because I'm screen sharing, but anyway, thank you for being here, and thanks to Bill Fontenot for being here, and I will get the pleasure of introducing him in a few minutes. But the first thing we're going to do is give some results of the scavenger hunt and the two competitions, the scavenger hunt and the photo and video competition. So is that what we're ready for right now, Janie?
Yes.
Okay. So I made a little PowerPoint to present the scavenger hunt competition. This was, I don't know, I hope you all had fun because I sure as heck did. Here's the closing, a screenshot of the overview from the INAT project that we ran this by. We ended up with 641 observations.
Excuse me, Betty, I'm going to interrupt you because I don't see your screen. Let me stop my share and see. Okay, now we have yours.
Now you have it? Okay,
yes.
Good. Sorry, I didn't think about that. You might not. So we had a good, I thought, of the 51 users that I manually entered into the project on INAT, 31 people made observations. That's about 61% participation, which I thought anything over half is pretty good. We ended up with 641 total observations and 31 observers. This is the map again, which I'm always dismayed when I look at it because my corner of the state is completely empty. I didn't participate in the scavenger hunt, nor did the Paxtons, because we're the ones who devised the list, and that we felt would not be fair for us to then compete with the list that we devised. So we didn't compete, and nobody else in our corner of the state competed. So I really regret that. But as you can see, the southern chapters carried the day, without a doubt. The most observed species, Anolis carolinensis, got surpassed by Cardinalis cardinalis for a while, but came back to the top and stayed there. And the most observations, which don't take this to heart now, this does not mean winners, because actually there were a lot of duplication, but Trey Fisher, and you can see made 74 observations, which was the far and away the most, but that doesn't mean that he won. So now I'm going to show you just a bit about how I calculated winners. This was our list that we generated, and we generated it as a check sheet. So I looked at the results on INAT's filtering to see who had done the most species and the most observations, and I created actual check sheets for anyone who appeared to have any chance at all at being in the top 5. And I think I ended up making like 8 or 10 check sheets to determine the top 5 winners. I went through, I filtered then on INAT, and I looked at each person's observations, and I marked them on a check sheet. I even wrote in where we had an order rather than a species, I wrote in what species that person found that fit that. I put RG to indicate that this had gone research grade, because that was going to be our tiebreaker. And even here, you'll see on the composite flower of this check sheet, the first one that I saw on this person's list was not research grade. And then I came to another composite flower on the same person's list that was research grade. So I crossed out the first one and wrote in the research grade one to make the each person's check sheet as solid as I could make it. So this is a person, the check sheet of a person who did not end up in the top 5. Now, here we go. Oh, too quickly, Ginas Chanterelle, apparently we were ahead of the season because nobody observed Ginas Chanterelle, and nobody observed, this surprised me, nobody observed a rough green snake, but that of course was an alternative. A lot of people saw the western ribbon snake, so that didn't end up with a hole in people's check sheet the way Chanterelle did, because there apparently are none out yet. Okay, in 5th place, honorable mention goes to Barbara Morris of the Southwest chapter. Barbara, you will notice, by the way, that these are packed pretty tightly together. This is not a remarkable difference here. 25 of the 35 items on the list. She did not have a wild card. Remember that Anhinga was a wild card. She did not find a wild card observation, and 20 of her observations were research grade. So that's Barbara Morris in 5th place. In fourth place, with a minuscule difference, Amber King of Greater Baton Rouge chapter. Amber also observed 25 of the 35 items on the list. She also had no wild card, but she had one extra research grade. She had 21 instead of Barbara Morris's 20, and this was the only time that I had to use research grade to break a tie. In third place, Kristen Melton, Greater New Orleans chapter, who's being very shy on INAT, needs to work on her profile. Come on, Kristen, we'd like to see you. She's a gray head, but she, 25 of the 35 items, but she had a wild card. So she ended up with 26 total observations that qualified, and she had 20 that were research grade. So as you can see, these three positions were tightly packed together. In second place, I don't know how, is this Tress or Trey? Trey Fisher, Greater New Orleans chapter?
It's Trey.
It's Trey. Trey did the most observations overall, but he had a lot of duplicates in the composite flower, etc. And I think had several snakes and etc. So anyway, 26 of the 35 items on the list, he had a wild card, so he had a total of 27. And 22 of his were research grade. Okay, drum roll. First place. Yes. First place goes to Karen Pinsonnet, or Pinsonat, I'm not sure how that's pronounced, Greater Baton Rouge. Karen really did this. There's a bit of a gap here. Karen worked very hard and she got 29 of the 35 items on the list. That's 80%. I thought that was really pretty good. And she did it without the wild card. She did it without the wild card, and 22 of her observations were research grade. So that's the outcome of the scavenger hunt. It was so much fun to watch and post some encouragements to people along the way. And my final observation is, guys, the women kicked your butt. Okay. If it weren't for Tress, it would be all women. So anyway, it was fun, and I hope you all had fun. And I do hope you will offer suggestions and things, whether we want to do this next year or not, when we're meeting face to face or not. It was sure fun, and iNaturalist made it pretty easy to do. So that's the scavenger hunt.
Oh, and Betty, can I just jump in there and say thank you so much for your hard work. And I know that you and Charles and Kimmy worked hard to put the list together. It was a wonderful list, and you did such a great job of cheerleading us along the way. And it was a lot of fun. I thank you for all your effort. Marty
asked if I could provide results by chapter, and I can, but that's manual labor. I can't, INAT will not allow me to easily search for that, but I can do it, and I want to do it. I really want to do it because it looks to me like Greater New Orleans and Greater Baton Rouge were in neck to neck there. And I really want to figure out who did the most observations. So I'll be working on that, and I will distribute it through the board when I get it done.
Well, Betty, don't work too hard, because City Nature Challenge is next week, and Baton Rouge is going to kick New Orleans' butt then.
Okay, all right.
So that'll settle it. It's an international competition.
That'll settle it. There you go. Right. So that's all I have on the scavenger hunt. I think now we're ready for Charles Paxton to report on the photo competitions.
Very good indeed. Yeah, I'd just like to say that next year's rendezvous dates are on the website already. So that's up there.
Thank you.
8 to 10th is correct.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go to screen sharing. And screen. Right. Okay, Kimmy made a nice little PowerPoint for me. So here goes as a video. So I was blown away by the contributions. They were fantastic. So as an overview, there were 34 entries altogether, and I think the overall standard was outstanding. It's a great deal of difference as well in the entries. And so together in their albums, I thought they looked fantastic side by side. There were 21 amateur entries, and there were 13 professional entries. many more entries than in the past. So I'd just like to congratulate everybody who took part because they're fantastic and I'm so grateful. And it's a great media archive for us. A lot of these images will be useful to go alongside articles about pollinators, for example, or lakes, or all kinds of things. It's wonderful. So thank you very much indeed. Moving on to the actual images, in the artistic category, the amateur class, it was Karen's Petite Perfection that won the day. So congratulations, Karen. And in the professional class, it was Berg Ransom's awesome sunset silhouette, that marvelous red-winged blackbird. In the nature and close-up category, the amateur division, it was Sherry Lynn's Heron and Snake. A remarkable image, fantastic, beautiful. Shame about the snake, but lovely. In the nature close-up category, I hand over to Kimmy.
In the professional category class, we've got Charles Paxton's Hello World and Sweet Turtle. Isn't that gorgeous? Congratulations.
Thank you very much indeed. It's a great honor. And in the habitat category, in the amateur division, we have Karen Pincenay's Relaxing Ripple. And in the professional class, we have Bette Kauffman's piece In the Time of Pandemic. Wonderfully tranquil view. In the wildlife category, the amateur winner was Karen Making a Beeline. Fantastic, lovely shot, really good. Well done, Karen. And in the professional category, we have Berg Ransom's Beautiful Breeding Beauty. Wonderful shot there, with a lovely breeding plumage. In the naturalist category, the amateur class, Natalie scooped with Who Are You? A really lovely photo of naturalists observing a barred owl. Fantastic.
And this was the most popular image with 20 votes.
Yes,
So
yeah.
everybody loved this one.
The most popular in show. Wonderful shot. Well done, Natalie. Very good. Moving on, in the wildlife category.
Yes, again, a professional. Charles got this one in safe hands, and this turtle is indeed. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Yes, now moving on, in the habitat category of the video contest, Janie Bro's Up the Oak Tree. Fantastic video, such smooth drone piloting, amazing. Really nice music too, lovely video. Thank you very much, Janie. Wonderful. And in the Critters in Action category, it was Bonnie's Hummingbird Migration 2020 that won the day. Well done, Bonnie. Super. Lovely. Okay, and that's a wrap. So I'd just like to thank everybody for participating because I think it was an amazing performance really on everybody's part. And I'm very grateful for the honor of being able to organize the photos. Thank you. I'm going to stick them up on either a Google Drive or a Dropbox. We'll sort out an archive so that all the chapters have access to these resources.
And we thank you, Charles, for all the revisions you did in the rules, from going from our real photo contest to a virtual. And so I know you worked hard on that, and we appreciate all your efforts, as well as teaching us how to, get the technology to put them where we were supposed to. And some of us put them in the wrong place, and you very gently told us where to put them. So thank you.
Thank you. Very welcome. Thank you very much.
And Bette, I think you're up next.
And okay, so I don't remember, Janie, you have to help me here. I don't remember the order. Am I supposed to present the award first, or does Bill have to talk and earn it first?
I kind of think you introduce him first. He's
Okay.
He's
All
already
right.
earned his award, and so
I know,
you would
I
just
know.
introduce him, then we're going to turn it over to Bill.
All right, I am being silly, of course. Hold on a second. Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is the, what year? 4th year or so for this award. And we were, whoops. Yeah, you all can't hear that. Okay. My phone's ringing in my ear, sorry. Bill Fontenot is the recipient of this year's Dormon Award, and it is much deserved. We were all, the entire statewide board voted on this, and we were blown away by Bill's qualifications and the many things he has done. He comes into a very illustrious group of people, of course, but he stands out as being really a top-notch choice for this award. We're very proud to give it to him. He began his career with the Lafayette Parish Consolidated Government, working first as a curator of natural sciences at the Lafayette Natural History Museum, and then as a manager of Acadiana Park Nature Station. He's dedicated his career in biology to restoring ecological integrity to land. Heaven knows we need more of that. From urban gardens to wildlife management areas. Local columnist for over 2 decades, he helped educate the public, people who can translate this language into something interesting that the general public can read, are of course extremely valuable to our passion. He has operated his own wildlife management, wildscape design, and ecological restoration consulting business. He specializes in ecological assessment, biological inventory, land use planning, and wildlife-friendly native plant-oriented landscape planning. His consultant work has taken him to hundreds of sites throughout the Midwest and Eastern US, serving wildlife management and conservation agencies, landscape designers, community planners, and on and on. He has degrees from the University of Louisiana and from University of Alabama, spent some time in a PhD program there. And so we're extremely proud to introduce him today. And again, whatever meanderings you have for us, Bill, we will enjoy immensely. And again, please type your questions as he speaks in the chat so you don't forget them. Take it away, Bill.
Thank you so much. And I just want to thank you as a group for making this effort. We would have never dreamed of a Master Naturalist program back in the day when I started, and Marty started, and Larry Raymond, and Bob Thomas, and so many others. And it's just very cool to see. For a good long while, we, well, I'll get to that later. But, you know, it's hard to, at this point in my career, it's hard to know what to tell you guys about, you know, I could tell you sort of how I became interested and all. I think we all have a story that brought us to the point where we became sort of infatuated with plants and animals and habitats. And I think probably everyone listening in today, everyone who's in the Master Naturalist program probably can also relate to a time when it turned from an infatuation to a transformation. And that's really the best hope for our planet, is that folks not only become infatuated, but become transformed in their hearts, so that then it becomes a very personal matter. The idea of maintaining the biosphere, not only maintaining it, but enriching it and restoring it, because it's vitally needed. So, I mean, my story begins, and I guess it's interesting too that, you know, the name of on your award, Caroline Dormon, I don't think there's an award available in Louisiana that would carry as much weight as that, simply because her name is on it. And she was the pioneer of, let's say, the celebrated naturalists in our state. There were probably many, many, many naturalists who did not write, and who did not paint, and who did not advocate, go out and speak to the public about certain issues. But she was certainly the first to do all those things and the first to have that type of profile in the state. And it's interesting because, you know, back in 1960, my own mother, who was a member of the Magnolia Garden Club in Ville Platte, Louisiana, got on a committee to support the establishment of a state arboretum adjacent to Chico State Park. The impetus behind that drive was a man by the name of Prof. LaFleur. Prof. LaFleur was the principal of Ville Platte High School at the time, and no mean naturalist himself. In fact, he was personal friends with Caroline Dormon. They would go together every year to the Society for Louisiana Iris meeting in Lafayette and got to know each other very well. And Prof sort of stumbled upon this 300-acre piece of magnolia. It's a transition forest, American beech, southern magnolia transition forest that was just gorgeous. And he knew that it was loaded with special goodies in terms of plant life. He didn't know exactly what, because the place was overrun by goats at the time. So Prof began to work on the citizenry of Ville Platte to come together and form a committee and lobby to have this 300-acre site added on to existing Chico State Park, which it's right contiguous with, and make it an arboretum. And my mother got on that committee, and the next thing you know, Caroline Dormon is coming through Ville Platte on her way to the IRIS meeting. She meets Prof at his house. He tells her all about the site and asks for her help. And she said, well, I'll tell you what, as soon as the legislature is in session, which was very, very soon, it was the month of April, that the Irish Society meeting was held, and that's usually the same month that the Louisiana State Legislature goes into session. So she ended up in Baton Rouge to lobby on other matters, and she just casually mentioned this idea of attaching this 300-acre site of special significance, ecologically anyway, to Chico State Park. And within one day, she had it all signed and sealed and delivered. And Louisiana had the honor of establishing the first state-owned arboretum in the United States. And that's the Louisiana State Arboretum. It just so happens that the year after that, my parents built a camp south of Ville Platte in southern Evangeline Parish along Bayou de Con. And at the same time, Prof. LaFleur, he had his own camp up near Chico State Park, on the edge of the park, as a matter of fact. And he grew nothing but wild plants in his garden around his camp. So he started giving plants away to all the committee members that were involved in the establishment of the Arboretum. And my mom came back with a truckload of native plants. And we brought them over to our new camp along Bayou de Con, and my dad and I put them in. Black walnut, tulip poplar, southern magnolia, red buckeye, and it goes on and on and on and on. And So that was my first, I guess, exposure to a naturalist type education. I was in the first grade, and that summer we had a drought, so I became the water boy, and I had to go out and water all those plants deeply for a long time, once every week through the summer to get them through. So I developed a relationship with them, I guess you could say, and checked up on them for the rest of my time until we didn't have we sold the camp eventually. But those plants and me went back to 1961, and that's sort of where my education started. So you can indirectly say that I'm a product of Caroline Dormon's enthusiasm and her reach. She reached all the way down into the country, into Ville Platte, and made some native plant advocates out of garden club members back there in the early 1960s. So I spent most of the rest of my life outside. We spent every single weekend at the camp. Both my parents were pharmacists. They worked hard running a drugstore, and in weekends they just wanted to get away from it all. So there were no televisions, no air conditioners, nothing like that. It was sort of rough in it, but it was in a beautiful place, and that's sort of where I grew up. Eventually, we'd moved there for the entire summer once my sister and I got out of school, and my parents just commuted to the drugstore during the day. So I spent entire summers there, many summers there, and I'm sure that's where my interest began in the outdoors. From there, it went on to hunting and fishing, which I did a whole bunch of. And finally, I think about 10 years after I initially planted those plants at the camp, I finally became a closet birder. Back in 1971 in Ville Platte, Louisiana, you did not want to, if you were a 17-year-old anyway, you certainly didn't want to advertise the fact that you watched birds, with binoculars. And but I did, and got to college a year later, and met other like-minded people. So I knew I might have been strange, but I wasn't that strange. And life took off from there. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do for a living. I had this idea that if I could become a pharmacist, I could use it as a trade. I grew up in the drugstore. I worked there a lot. So I got into pharmacy school at Northeast, and I was in there a year and a half before coming to the realization that I hated it. I didn't like school, so I can only imagine how it might have been if I would have graduated and ended up having to work. And I apologize ahead of time to any pharmacists that might be listening in right now. But my parents both told me that I would never be a pharmacist, and I didn't know what they were talking about. I had other ideas. I thought I could take that trade anywhere in the country that I wanted, and have a good job. That's all I was interested in. But fortunately, I met John Lynch in 1977, and that changed everything for me. John Lynch was a biologist for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and he was stationed in Lafayette, and he was a waterfowl specialist. And I was visiting a couple of pharmacy school friends in Lafayette, and they told me about this man who was raising wild geese in his backyard. And being a birder, I immediately said, "Oh, they're not wild. They just might look wild, but they're not wild." And one of my friends said, "No, they're wild." He grew up hunting geese, and he knew that they were wild. And so I said, well, you're going to have to show me that. So we took a walk over to John's house. He lived on the eastern edge of Lafayette on the Breaux Bridge Highway. So it was almost in the country, but it was not quite, you know. And he and his wife, Zoe, had a big lot, big corner lot. So you could walk around two sides of it, and you could see the flock of geese that he was raising. And they were snow geese. And yes, he was raising them. And it was a Sunday afternoon, and he came outside. He and Zoe both came on the front porch and asked if they could help us. And we said, no, we don't want to bother you. This guy said you were raising wild geese, and I just wanted to see it for myself. And he said, oh, are you a birder or a hunter? I said, yeah. And he said, what's your name? And I told him my name, and we started talking. And I said, you know, when he told me what he was doing, he was sort of a pioneer in snow goose biology. And he was also the first biologist to, he sort of invented the idea of aerial surveys for waterfowl, believe it or not. You know, right now we take it for granted. Now we use Google Earth, but back then he got the idea, hey, let's get up in a plane and we can get over the entire flock and take photographs of the flock and count up the individuals in the photographs, and we'll know exactly how many birds we're talking about. Before then, it was not, nobody had thought of that. So that was pretty fascinating. And, you know, I said, you know, I've never made anything less than an A in any biology course that I've ever taken in my life. And I just don't know that I'd want to do it for a living. And he said, why so? And I said, because I just can't see myself stuck on one organism, studying one organism for, you know, my whole career. And he said, it doesn't have to be that way. I said, really? And he said, you know what I'm studying right now besides geese? I'm studying wild irises. I'm studying native orchids. You want to see them? And he was raising native orchids in a conservatory in his backyard, he and Zoe, his wife. And then they had a sort of a backyard mom and pop native plant nursery where they were selling a lot of natives, especially aquatic natives. And this was in 1977. And I said, so you got your hands in everything? And he said, that's right. He said, you know, for the first few years, you may have to study one thing, but once you are through with that project, you can go on to probably whatever interests you. That's what I've been doing. So that Monday, the following day, I resigned from pharmacy school and signed up in biology. I just needed 2 more semesters to get my bachelor's in biology, and then went on to get my master's and did some postgraduate work at the University of Alabama. I finished up there in 1982, and Lydia and I, my wife, moved back here to Lafayette. And I'd sort of disappeared into the oil field. We needed to make a lot of money to live. We had to pretty much build our own house. We dragged an old top half of an old garage apartment out here in the wilds north of Lafayette, along Bayou Vermilion, and started working on it to the point where we could live in it. We didn't even have electricity at the time. They hadn't run utility lines, and in fact, we didn't even have a road. We had a cattle trail through a pasture to get to our house, which was a half mile off of the nearest highway. And it wasn't until 1986 that I got word that of the presence of a natural history museum in Lafayette. I didn't have any idea that there was. We always called it the planetarium because it was the Lafayette Natural History Museum and planetarium, but everybody called it the planetarium. So I never knew that it had a natural history museum attached to it. But when I found out through a newspaper article that they in fact did, I did my graduate work in natural history museums at University of Louisiana Monroe and at University of Alabama. So all of my training was in Natural History Museum as a curator of lower vertebrates. Fishes and herps were my thing, and taxonomy was what I was studying. That is the classification system, how to name these animals and why they should be named the names that they're named and put into the family groups and subfamily groups, et cetera, et cetera. So I brought my resume over to the museum and met with the director, and she hired me part-time on the spot as a field guide to take museum members out on field trips for birds and plants and herps, et cetera, et cetera. And also as a writer. She was looking for someone who could contribute a weekly column into the Lafayette paper every Sunday, a nature column. And she asked me if I wrote, and I said, yeah. And she said, you think you could do that? And I said, sure, yeah. And she said, do you imagine running out of material? Because that's what she was afraid of. She said she thought we might run out of material after a year or so. And I said, no, I can't imagine that. You know, if I wrote about one bird a week, you know, in Louisiana, that would be, you know, 500 weeks worth of birds. So, and then we could start talking about plants, and there are, you know, 2,500 plus species of plants that we could talk about for our state, et cetera, et cetera. So she got me on that, and I spent the next 23 years doing contributing that column to the paper, the local paper. Today, by the way, I just like to remind you that I don't do it in the paper anymore, but for all of you on Facebook, if you look up the Nature Dude, that's where my column is today. And I really like it that way because I could submit photographs where that wasn't possible back in the newspaper days. So I'm still writing, and I'm still happy and passionate about doing that. So that's sort of the story. I eventually got a full-time job at the Natural History Museum, and then I was moved to manage the Acadiana Park Nature Station, which is also run by local government in Lafayette, and it has an adjacent nature trail. And I spent 24 years there. And I'll never forget my first week. You know, I had been so focused on taxonomy and fishes, freshwater fishes, throughout my college, my grad school career. And then I was focused on making money in the oil field. And I lost touch with what was going on environmentally with the planet. And as soon as I got to work at the Natural History Museum, I got access to many newsletters and research papers, and realized within about a week of reading that we were in bad shape. And this was back in 1986. It really shocked me as a biologist to know the numbers of animals that were in trouble back during that time, plants as well. And I remember coming home to Lydia after that first week and said, I don't know if I can hang here. I may need to get back to the oil field. And she said, "What's the problem?" And I said, "It's just depressing." I said, these problems they're nearly overwhelming. There are so many hot spots over so much of the planet. And I was just discouraged, and felt like, what can I do? What can I possibly do to alleviate the situation? Here are all these plants and animals that I'd fallen in love with, and over half of them were already in trouble as species. So Lydia said, well, you can do the best that you can do every single day that you go to work. That's what you can do. And at least you could sleep well at night, knowing that you tried. And that made perfect sense to me, and caused me to realize that it wasn't my job to change the world. It was my job to change my situation, to take it to on an individual level and do what I could do as an individual. And then whatever might happen after that would happen. And that's how I took it. And I haven't regretted a single day since that time in working it out the way that it got worked out through me. And what the decision that I made was, since I can't, I was part of civil service, and we certainly could not come off as environmental advocates or environmentalists. Nor did I want to do that. I was a professional, and I didn't want to scream and holler and point my finger at anybody, because I knew that I'd be an instant hypocrite if I did, because I use gasoline and I use electricity, and I'm complicit as much as anybody else who's on the grid. So that was not an approach that appealed to me. But what did appeal to me was the idea that so many of my friends had no idea, if I didn't have much of an idea of the dire situation that the planet was in. As a biologist, how could I expect my friends to, who were not biologists? And then it dawned on me that, until you get to know somebody or something, it's really difficult to care about that person or that thing. You remember the song, all you grayheads out there would remember, to know you is to love you. And that's what it boils down to. You have to know these organisms in order to care about them. And you have to care about them in order to activate and do something about ensuring that they'll always have a home, just like they have a right to a home, just like every human has a right to a home. And that's, I figured I could accomplish that by my article in the paper, and by my work at the Nature Center of introducing kids of all ages to these plants and these animals, and how wonderful they were, and their secrets of the way they went on and lived their lives, and the specific jobs that they had to do within the habitats that they lived in order to make the habitats work, and all habitats working together make the whole biosphere work together. So I sort of deconstructed the process, the ecological process, and brought it down to the level of the kids that I was working with, as well as the adults that I was taking out on field trips. So it turned out to be very rewarding, and I hope that I played a part in seeing some hearts get transformed the way my heart was transformed all those years ago. And hopefully I have. I think I have. And the beat goes on. Here we are, it's 35 years later. We've still got heavy duty challenges with our biosphere. We still are spewing a whole lot of pesticide out there, both from an agricultural side and from even residential commercial, that we don't need to be doing. You know, I understand that there's a need for chemicals in certain instances, and I myself as a gardener occasionally will resort to that, but certainly not broadcast and not celebrated and talked about like it's the true, it's the you know, better living through chemistry. Like chemistry is the answer to all of our problems. We've seen the results of that type of thinking all the way back in the 1960s when Rachel Carson wrote her book, and things are getting better along those lines. Certainly, the broadcasting of pesticides, it is being curtailed, and people are waking up to that. But on the habitat loss side, I don't think the news is as good. I think we're still losing lots and lots of natural habitat for various reasons, but predominantly for commercial and residential development. And again, you have to ask the question, where is everybody going to live? I mean, you know, people got to live somewhere, and their habitat's going to suffer as a result. So what is it that we can do, you know, about that? Well, we can make our own living spaces habitat friendly. In other words, we can instill or reinstate ecological function and integrity into our own yards where we live, and the places where we work and go to school and go to church, everywhere that we possibly can. So that is a movement that is just getting off the ground, as far as I can tell. It looks like around 2010, right after Doug Talami wrote his books, Bringing Nature Home and Nature's Best Hope. I don't know if you guys know of Doug Talami, but he's a professor of entomology at University of Delaware, and he has sort of proven all the things that people like me suspected through observation back in the 1960s and 70s and 80s. Dr. Talami, thanks to technology and his help from his students, is proving a lot of these things. The first time I heard him speak and talk about how he put a camera, a little remote camera, in a chickadee nest box, and how he and his students counted the number of little itty bitty moth larvae, little worms, that the parents brought in to raise 2 nestlings. And that number came to around 7,000, if I'm not mistaken. These were not the worms that the chickadees themselves were eating to sustain their own lives. These were the worms that they were bringing in to raise 2 nestlings, 7,000. So it gives you an idea of what all it takes for just a pair of very tiny birds to survive and reproduce. And this is something that they attempt to do every year. They're not successful every year, but at least they try. And if that doesn't grab you, then nothing will. And it did grab. It grabbed a lot of people. And a whole new wave of habitat gardening erupted as a result of Dr. Talami's books. And that's sort of how my career was resurrected. I retired from the Nature Center in 2008. And by 2016, that was 8 years later, people started contacting me and asking me if I still had my native plant book, and if I was still doing consulting for habitat restoration and for wildlife gardening, and it sort of jump-started my career from that point. So there's a good bit of hope, even while the temperature of the earth is climbing and the poles are melting. I see a bunch of hope out there in this new wave that is taking over. And you know, if it were just a local wave or a regional wave, I could say, well, I think it's a little too little, too late. But today, with social media and the World Wide Web, we have the opportunity to get the news out and educate people to a degree that we never have before now. And I think it's for that reason that I'm optimistic that everyone with a computer has a capability of being educated on exactly what it's going to take to get the carbon out of the atmosphere and back into the ground. And it's happening right now. As naturalists, you know, it's our job, it always was our job, to observe and to record. Those are the two things that all naturalists do. And then some naturalists observe, record, and then report. And they can report either through speaking or through writing or through teaching, but they can report in those fashions. So today, the job of a naturalist has become overwhelmingly important, in my opinion, much more important than it ever was before. And important in that those of us who observe and record and report can support positive change, policy change within governments and corporations. Those are the two entities that could actually get something done, especially on a large scale, because they have the power and they have the money to do so. And so what we can do, what we should be doing, is observing, recording, reporting, and making certain that government and industry are aware of our observations. What's going on? How's this animal doing? How's this plant doing? Which ones are declining, and at which rates are they declining? And see, now, again, with social media, we can crowdsource all this information. And that's what's happening, exactly what's happening right now through iNaturalist, which I don't know how to work all that stuff, and I don't care. But I can still observe, record, and report, and my younger friends can put it on iNaturalist, and then it becomes part of a massive database. The same is true with birds. You know, birds have eBird, their own database, but you can also report bird life in iNaturalist. I think iNaturalist, you can report everything, anything that is alive. So to have that available, to have any senator or congressman wants to know information, they can have an assistant who specializes in working iNaturalist, and they can find out whatever they need that needs to be found out in order to offer proof for bills, conservation bills, for example, that might be in the hopper, or other bills associated with ecological restoration or preservation of natural areas or anything like that. So there's, at a time when our biosphere has been, I don't think it's ever been in any worse shape in terms of the time span of humanity. Since humanity first appeared, I don't think it's been in any worse shape. But at the same time, I'm very hopeful. Where 10 years ago, I may have not been so hopeful. But thanks to the movement, let's call it, and to groups like yours, and to apps like iNaturalist, there's plenty of room for hope. And I think I'll leave it with that. And thank you all very much for listening in. If I can answer any questions, or if anybody has any comments, I'd be happy to entertain.
Yay, thank you.
I do have something that I'm going to add, but first there is one question from Karen Vingelo. Bill, how do you feel about the direction we're taking currently as a country?
The direction we're taking, what?
Currently as a country.
The direction?
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if I got my finger on that very much. I mean, I like what I heard the president talk about this past week. But you know, words have always been cheap to me, and I want to see some action from not just our government, but from world governments. And I think I should add, you know, one thing that I forgot, but I know it's not going to make any difference, and I know she'll never know it, but I want to dedicate my award, the award that you gave me, I want to dedicate it to Greta Thunberg. And you know, for her ability to get up in front of the United Nations and speak the truth to power. That's something I never did, never could do, but we need a couple of 100 million Greta Thunbergs. We need a couple of 1,000 million Greta Thunbergs, and I think we're going to get them. If the UN has any power left in it to sway governments, to entice governments to make the right decision, not necessarily the cheap, easy, quick fix solution, but long-term restoration of ecological integrity on our planet. I haven't seen that yet. I've seen it in small doses. You know, our here in Louisiana, our wildlife management area program with wildlife and fisheries. That's a great idea, isn't it? To set aside lands just for wildlife, but it turns out that they're harvesting the timber off of those lands at unbelievable rates, simply to pay the salaries of their biologists, because the Department of Wildlife and Fisheries has been raided time and time and time again by the legislature. Money has been taken away from them time and time and time again for God knows what kind of projects, to where they have money in their budget to pay for enforcement, but to pay for biologists, no. So they depend on mineral extraction and timber off of their wildlife management areas in order to pay those bills, and that has to stop. You see, we have to as a government, we have to say no, we're gonna reinstate this money, and you don't have to do that to your land anymore. You can save it for the wild things, and let it grow without us having to come in and yank out all the timber. So we'll see as far as what direction our country is. I'm in a wait and see mode on that one.
Thank you. If there are other questions, I want to piggyback on what Bill just talked about. I iNaturalist is fabulous. And one of the reasons I enjoyed the scavenger hunt so much is because it got us out there and we made 634 observations in a couple of weeks to add to that database. But there's another database. There's one thing iNaturalist does not cover, and that's phenology. You can record the phenology of plants when you put your information up, and I urge you to do that. If you've never done that, look into that. But there's also a national phenology network, and phenology, studying the phases, the seasons of things, is extremely important to tracking climate change. It's essential data to tracking climate change. The National Phenology Network has an equally fabulous website full of wonderful information, and I have taken the training with them. I am a local phenology leader, and I would really love to see master naturalists get more involved. Right here in the northeast corner of the state, we have a Northeast Louisiana phenology group, and we have some shared trails and some private trails, but we're contributing to that database, and it really is not hard. And so I'm going to be pushing that and hoping that some of the other chapters will ask me to come and do a little workshop to get you started in recording phenological data and contributing to that database, because again, it is essential to tracking climate change. So just an addition to what Bill said. What other questions do you have or comments?
I've got one comment for Bill. I was intrigued by kind of your story and your connection to Caroline Dormon and the Arboretum, but also John Lynch. Jack Price was a good friend of mine before he passed away.
Yeah.
And used to come spend hours at the nature park chewing my ear off. But he always spoke about John Lynch. And I guess John Lynch was his hero when it came to nature. And, you know, Jack was really into orchids, and I guess he got into orchids and pollination and all that through John Lynch. So
Yeah.
It was interesting to hear that, your connection to him. I never met him, but I heard all about him.
I had wonderful times with Jack. See, I wasn't stuck in the office with him sitting there. I could hit and run with Jack, because Jack, yeah, he was some kind of guy. But you know, Larry, you know well that he was writing native plant articles back in the 40s for the Shreveport paper. So he was sort of doing half of what I was doing way before I was even born. And yeah, Jack and Ella B were quite a pair. I got to hang out at their house and saw some amazing plants over there.
Other questions, comments? Well, if not, as the Vice President, Bob Thomas could not be with us today, as you know, but as the Vice President of Louisiana Master Naturalist Association, I am honored to present you with our Caroline Dormon Outstanding Naturalist Award. I see that you are wearing the shirt that we gave you. Has your beautiful piece of glass come yet?
It has. It has.
Good. All right.
Very beautiful. Thank you all very much.
We're more than delighted to have you among our honorees. And I love your dedication to Greta Thunberg. Absolutely wonderful.
Long live Greta.
Janie, do we have any other business today other than a word about Rendezvous 2022?
No, but I would just reiterate that I will send out, Bill, I will communicate with you directly on your email to make sure that I have the correct information to send to all of our members about how to contact you for purchase of your book, as well as remind everybody about your Nature Dude Facebook or any other social media that you have that we could link up to follow, you know, what you're doing. That would be great. I will compile that all in an email and send it out to all of our members.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
that.
Can I screen share right now, Janie? Let me try. I just thought I would spend a moment reminding everybody that, whoops, let me back up one. Rendezvous 2022 is scheduled at Camp Hardner. The dates, according to who came up with the dates? April 8 through 10, 2022 is when it is scheduled. That's a Friday, Saturday, and a Sunday. And I just thought I would share quickly with you that I went to Camp Hardner yesterday, as a matter of fact. I went down there because I've been trying for 2 years to decide or to figure out or to get a clear identification of this plant. There's a number of yuccas at Camp Hardner, and I think I assumed in the beginning that they were Yucca filamentosa, and I put it up on INAT that way and got challenged. And so I'm pretty sure that they're probably Ludovicianum, but I went down there because I heard that they were about to bloom. Well, they didn't open for me, but anyway, I spent a lot of time taking pictures and measuring and so forth to try to get a handle on which species of yucca we have at Camp Hardner. But I thought it would be fun, since we're going to be there 1 year from now at Camp Hardner for 3 days, to share with you that I spent just about an hour wandering after I photographed this plant and wandering around a bit. And here's just some of the wonderful things that that you'll see at Camp Hardner next year. Dwarf sundew all over the place. And I also think there's a couple of boggy areas, and I'm pretty sure that the other species of Drosera is there as well, and I just haven't laid my eyes on it yet. Dragonflies, the blue corporals this is early in the year, and the blue corporals are around. I saw several males, and then I finally spotted a female. Likewise, this is the calico pennant. This is the only place. I don't know about southern Louisiana, but I don't see calico pennants in northern Louisiana. I see them at Camp Hardner, and I have recorded and documented them at Camp Hardner every year for quite a few years now, but that is the only place in the top half of the state that I see calico pennants. And again, yesterday I saw multiple males, and then finally I spied a female. The males are red, the females are gold, and they are small and just incredibly elegant and beautiful dragonfly. Always at Camp Hardner. A river cooter crossed the path right in front of me and kept his eye on me while I went around him and went on his way. And then I swear to you that Camp Hardner is another load of various things, and one of them is rose begonias. This is a wild orchid growing on the edge of one of the artificial, man-made lakes that are on the property, but they grow in enormous patches all the way around this particular lake. And so this one was a fresh bloom yesterday. So I hope very much to see you next year at Camp Hardner for Rendezvous 2022.
Beautiful, Betty.
Thank you. Anything else that anybody has for the good of the cause? If
Nope.
not,
Thank everybody. Bill,
thank you.
wonderful presentation today. Very much enjoyed hearing your story, and motivates us to, I know we all do a little bit, but sometimes we need a push to do a little bit more, and that we're going to do.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Bill. Wonderful
Thank
talk.
you very much, all of you.
Thanks.
Thank
See
you.
y'all next time. Thanks, Janie, for running the show.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.